So not everybody loves to clean constantly, and here are some tips that we have in order to avoid if you're trying to do any interior design trends. Our first one is open shelving. As great as it seems, and it can look great in a magazine, the reality is it becomes a dust collector, becomes a whole huge mess. It actually becomes an eyesore because you end up just making it a dumping ground. What we would suggest is try and use a mixture of open and closed storage. So if you can see in this project that we did, we used a lot of base unit furniture, which is all concealed. Everything was hidden in there, games consoles, paperwork, you name it. And even on the top, you can see there's a wall hung unit there where we have used it in a different texture. But then we continued with keeping the shelving on the other side where we used accessories and just a few select books, which actually become a feature rather than an eyesore. This becomes really easy to clean, and you actually enjoy the cleaning process because the products that you have on there and the items that you have, whether it's a photo frame or a nice vase that you've collected on your travels or something that you've seen that goes well with the interiors, they become pieces that you want to look after in your home, rather than it becoming like, oh, more books that I just don't need that I have to look at. Another thing to avoid if you hate cleaning is matte black fixtures, especially in bathrooms. We use them plenty in a lot of our clients' homes, but we understand if cleaning is not your forte, then these are things to avoid because they add a lot of water residue, they leave watermarks, fingerprints, and it just becomes less flawless and more messy. Materials we would suggest you use are white or stainless steel. These tend to be a lot more reflective and cleaner in the room because the colors that we get from limescale or you name it tend to blend in and they don't show up as much, whereas on black it really highlights it. Another thing to avoid if you hate cleaning is glass shower enclosures. The amount of watermarks that you do get tend to be such an eyesore in your bathroom when you walk in, that spa feel just fades away. If you can, what we have tried to do is if you have space in your home, especially in your bathroom, to do a walk-in shower where there's no door. This means you avoid using as much glass and it just feels a lot more luxurious and less glass to clean, right? Notice how we put this glass screen in our client's home. It just exudes that cleanliness and you again want to clean these kind of items. When it's too much glass, it feels overwhelming. So here, as we use less, the cleaning process is so much easier. Again, all these options are just options if you don't like to clean. Otherwise, they still work perfectly fine. Another trend to avoid if you hate cleaning is high gloss items. For instance, your TV units, your kitchen cabinets, your bathrooms, because what you will find is you get a lot of fingerprints and smudges that are on show. Obviously, if you like cleaning, it's not a big deal. These are very easy things to clean. But one way to avoid it is using a matte finish. This means that the grease from the food that you've been eating, etc., just don't show up as easily and become a lot more smoother to clean. As gloss items are reflective, you tend to see every nook and every scratch that's on it. So matte gives that kind of distraction where you don't see it as much. Notice how in this kitchen we used a matte finish kitchen, but then the tiles in the back had that pattern of gloss. Yes, I know we said gloss is a hard thing to clean, but at least you have that good mixture and texture rather than it all being all matte. It's quite nice to have that little bit of gloss. That way, cleaning again is much easier in that smaller space rather than the whole space altogether. A big trend to avoid if you hate cleaning is doing wall-to-wall carpets. There's nothing wrong with them. We also put them in a lot of our clients' home. But in order to avoid that effort of always cleaning and worrying if your makeup's going to fall on the floor or if you wear shoes in your home and you don't like your outdoor shoes coming into your home and always worry about all the dust and the cleaning that comes with it, what we would suggest is putting a rug underneath your bed. This cozies up the room, or a rug underneath your living space. This not only cozies up the room, but it gives that feature and that design aspect to it as well. It's much easier to clean a wooden floor or a tiled floor than it is to clean a carpet, because what you'll find is if you drop water, if you drop a drink, you'll never have that issue of having to clean the whole carpet. So what we would suggest is always stick to a rug instead of wall-to-wall carpeting. Carpets tend to trap dust, dirt, and odors. So if this is something you want to try and avoid in your day-to-day life, going for a rug makes a big difference. This isn't so much of a trend, but it tends to be in most people's homes, especially older homes, is the textured ceilings. If you don't like cleaning, this does become a bit of a dust collector. Over time, it just happens, you can't help it. So if you're ever redoing your home, always try and opt to plaster your ceiling so that it becomes smooth. This just alleviates all the dust that will come in the future. Initially, when you plaster anything, it will be messy, but overall in the long haul, you will find that cleaning up will be much easier. Especially if you already have spotlights, what we would suggest is putting a recessed track light in. These are all flush to the ceiling, and it means that cleaning and dusting is a much more easier task rather than having recessed spotlights or light fixtures. If you hate cleaning, another interior design trend to avoid is slatted or cane furniture. What you'll find is a lot of those items get trapped dirt, food, you name it inside, and they become a pain to clean. If you want to try and avoid this, what we would say is opt for faux leather or leather fabrics, which are a lot more easier to wipe down and clean out, especially with a hoover. Notice how in this sofa we used a leather one, which because the client said that they had a lot of kids and it was a high traffic area, which most sofas are. But if you have young kids, the last thing you want is a fabric that you're constantly stressed out about. So in order to avoid that cleaning process, leather goes a long way. All you need to do is wipe it. If you hate cleaning, we always try to avoid lights which have a lot of motion going on in them. What we mean by that is crystals hanging or woven textures. Try and opt for a light which already is compact in one piece or doesn't have any grooves or nooks and crannies inside which collect dust. Because what you'll find is dusting a light fixture is very difficult, especially if it's in an uncomfortable position to reach. We always try and use light fixtures which are very easy to dust. So you can see in this project here, this light was a solid piece, and in between the nooks and crannies, they're so tight that the dust would easily come off with a duster. Whereas when there's a bigger space, you can get something like cobwebs or spiders or any of that in between, and they're never fun to clean. So in a lot of our projects, we always say to use wall-hung furniture, reason being it makes the room feel bigger. But if you're somebody who doesn't like to clean underneath and have to deal with the repercussions of the mess that comes with it, we would say using furniture that goes straight to the floor. It just makes it easier where that hair would accumulate or the dust that would accumulate wouldn't be there, and then you just end up cleaning around it rather than underneath it. The last trend that we would try and point out to avoid if you hate cleaning is all white interiors. As great as they look in the magazines, every mark will show up. It's just inevitable. So what we would try and opt for is trying using a neutral color palette. See this lounge we did where we used very neutral colors, but we used texture. This just means that those little marks that may show up here and there they're much more easier to be hidden rather than see as soon as you enter a room. It just means cleaning is a lot more enjoyable and doesn't feel like a tedious task. If you want a stylish home without the maintenance and the constant scrubbing, try and opt for things like matte tiles, matte finishes, washable paint, clothes storage, neutral tones, textures. These are things that are going to help you avoid having to constantly be cleaning. If you like this video, check out our 5 interior design trends to avoid in real life.